Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? Hi, I'm Nathan Mercero, CEO of Planning Alternatives. We're a disruptive brand in the financial planning space with a point of view that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Growing up in a small town in Canada, I experienced examples of families with money and without. It started me on this journey of understanding wealth and the idea that spending a day in a canoe with someone could be one of the best investments you could make. Join me as I sit down with leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, rule breakers, and friends to discover their perspective of true wealth. And maybe you'll start to shift yours. Well, I'm excited today to be joined by Eli Cheatham. Eli is president of International Farming, a food sourcing solutions platform in agri-farming and investing into innovative technology for farmers. Eli, welcome to Day in a Canoe. Glad to have you here
Thank
today.
you. Thank you, Nathan. Happy to be here.
Great. Given that international farming is at the intersection of agriculture, investment, stewardship, how do you integrate and balance business objectives with more responsibility and stewardship perspective?
Well, I think one of them is really realizing what makes farmland a good investment and what type people want to be in farmland. It's a long-term investment. It's a long play. People who have that more patient money, who have that mindset, are really good partners. Ones who aren't trying to make a fast profit, but want to work with the farmers, want to work with the land, to really build something special long term and of a lot of value.
Farming is a hard job. I grew up in Schitt's Creek in Canada and around a lot of farms. What do you find the role of technology is doing with farming, and maybe some examples of where technology is showing up?
Well, I think that some people have a certain image that pops in their head when they think of a farmer. And what I've found is that our farmers are amazing business people. They are tech forward. They are, constantly innovating innovating and finding really clever ways to grow more with less. And technology plays a huge role in that. The way that I look at it is that all the farmers I know want to be farming. They don't want to be doing paperwork. They don't want to be, just stuck at their desk. And so, being able to have technology where they can just pull up their phone real quick and, log what's going on in the farm, see their monitors, what's going on with my water, what do I need to do differently this day, and make those quick adjustments that make a huge difference in business. I think really frees them up to do what they do best and to make really good decisions.
This topic of farming just reminds me of a project that my father gave me when I was a teenager, and he had rototilled, harrowed this 10-acre field, and he thought it was a great idea for me to pick the rocks off of the field. And I'm like, I don't see that as a great idea. Uh, and so this was
It's
back in the day.
character
So
building.
yeah, I think he saw it as character building, and I did not have that point of view. So I remember that my innovation was to figure out how to get these different pieces of equipment to use to gather the rocks and to do it as efficiently. And then I figured out how to get a friend to help me and et cetera, et cetera. So my point is, I agree that innovation in farming is critical. And I think uh,
Absolutely.
people underappreciate the challenges of what farming goes through and what profound effects innovation and technology can have. Now, a question about international farming. What is the mission of your business, and what is your hope for making the world a better place through what your business does?
Our mission is threefold. One is to empower farmers, and we do that really through our technology offerings and also just really partnering with them, realizing that in a lot of ways they know the land far better than we can. So we see ourselves as partners and working with them and respecting their wisdom and then give them the technology. The other is growing consciously. So, from the beginning, we had a commitment to leave the land better than we found it. And so it is, I used the phrase earlier, like grow more with less, but it's being very thoughtful about the practices that we're doing, the inputs that we're using, and being as regenerative as possible with our growing. And then the last is feeding the world. And the way that we do that really is helping to connect farmers directly with food buyers. Nathan, I'll ask you a question. And I actually may have told you when we met before, but how many, out of the dollar, how much of that dollar do you think the farmer gets for a piece of food that's sold?
Is this a Canadian dollar or US dollar?
I'm sorry, US, US.
I would guess A, it's low. I would guess it's under 20 cents, but I don't know how far.
It really depends on the crop, but on average, it's 7 cents on the dollar. And so, farmers are asked really to take the majority of the risk at like at a sliver of, the profit. And one of the main reasons that is because the supply chain is overcomplicated and you have a lot of aggregators in the middle taking a lot of that value. And so, we see it as a huge win whenever we can try to facilitate an offtake agreement with one of our farmers and a major food buyer, or find other ways just to really streamline that process. I spend a lot of my time working with major food buyers on ways that we can partner through technology or through serve as land partners for them and whatnot.
There's a lot going on in the farming industry, a lot of change, a lot of disruption, a lot of challenges. What gives you the most hope about farming?
I always, when people ask me about kind of just the shifts that I've seen in farming since I've been involved, since we started the company, and the company I will say was started actually by my husband, who's a seventh generation farmer. So there's a lot of like agricultural history and wisdom there. At our first shareholder meeting, we had a panel of our farmers and some of our key folks, and somebody in the audience asked about organic, and one of our guys' response was, the only thing I know about organic is that my crazy sister in California buys it, and I was like, "Oh goodness." Fast forward, 15 years or so, and I was on a call Monday with him actually talking about regenerative agriculture. And so I love how the conversation has shifted more and more. It's become more of like mainstream discussion. I think that that's really powerful. The other thing is that I think that consumers want to know where their food is from now. It's really hard to care about something that you feel so detached from. And so when I think about, how can we grow in a sustainable way in the future, it really is, with reconnecting people to the land, to the food, and to the farmers who produce that. And I'm seeing a lot of the right people getting in the right rooms and having those discussions.
Now, that's great insight. And I personally find the organic food movement refreshing. I mean, been a believer in it for a long time, but
Mhm.
it's definitely gotten momentum. And it's great to see how people's consciousness about food and the land in general is evolving. Just to change topics for a minute here, you and I met at the TED conference in
We did.
Vancouver.
But we
And
saw each other before that.
that's true. That's true. It was an airplane.
Yes.
Mo-
We sat
um,
next to each other on an airplane, but did not actually talk to each other until we got to Ted.
Kind of ironic. But the TED conference was interesting, I found, and there
Mhm.
was a lot of topics covered. Curious what stuck with you from that conference or the set of speakers that you were tuned into.
I was thinking about that leading up to our conversation, and, the person that I thought stole the show was Stephen Collier, the musician who curated all of, the artists throughout the conference. I just thought he was phenomenal. He did not take himself too seriously. He was relatable. His passion for music was absolutely infectious. When somebody's passionate about something, it doesn't even really matter what it is, right? I mean, it's just you want to be around that. And he had that and was, unbelievably talented as well.
And for listeners, can you describe what he did? Because it
Oh
was
gosh.
fantastic.
Well, I don't know that I can. I will try, and
That's
please,
fair. That's
like,
fair.
blend in. He spoke about, the different ways that you could make music. He blended different sounds together. He sang, he made lots of different, I don't want to say noises, but like from his, he could make impressionate, no, impersonate,
Impersonate. Yeah.
different instruments. He
Mhm.
then also brought like a symphony, and he like conducted real time a symphony with them basically, or a piece of music. Nathan, please, I'm actually not a very musical person, but I just found him so contagious. So please, chime in, help me out here. He is, you have to admit, he is very hard to
Yeah, you
define.
have to be there for sure. It's like he created art in front of an audience using
Yeah.
music and the creativity and innovation of all these pieces and harmonies and overlays was just
Hmm.
watching a musical, an artist with a paintbrush, apply
Yes.
it to canvas with music. So it was
Hmm.
yeah, the person that stuck with me was the CEO of Reddit. I forget
Hmm.
his name, but he was talking about, especially in the world of social media technology, how so much of social media is the stage. People are there to perform, they're to get
Yeah.
likes, clicks, to just have this ego recognition of sorts. Not that that's bad when you're trying to advance a message, but at the same time, his promotion was to focus on Reddit's mission of creating
Yeah.
community and having those authentic relationships evolve out of
Hmm.
groups that get together. And I particularly liked his example of "Am I an asshole?"
Yes.
group, where a
Absolutely.
lady posted, "Would I be an asshole if I didn't invite my mother-in-law to the baby shower, or the wedding shower?" I can't remember. Future
New Year's
mother-in-law.
baby shower. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, baby shower. And, overwhelmingly, people said, "Yeah, that is not cool." There's like it's an open forum where people are giving feedback. They took the same prompt and applied it into AI, and AI's response, "Oh, you should not invite her because you're standing up for yourself, you're creating boundaries, you're being your own person." So, it's really profound how this technology trap can change the mindset and perspective of people when the
Yes.
power of community through authenticity is really the activator to great outcomes.
I think
So
that's
if
so
you
true.
were to give a TED Talk, Eli, and you had you're on stage, what would you be talking about?
This is one that I was tempted when you shared this question. I was tempted to be like, you know what, everybody's gonna have to stay tuned on that one because I couldn't immediately come up with something, but I will come up with one option. When I was growing up, my path has been very kind of twist and turn. And when I was young, I felt a lot of pressure to be linear. And when I wasn't, I thought that I was failing or that people wouldn't take me seriously. And as I've gotten older, I've really come to appreciate and respect kind of the cyclical existence that I live, and trusting those rhythms and going with that versus just trying to be like straight and narrow. This is what I have to do, and really try to work with those cycles, work with kind of nature, what's feeling supported by nature, what's not. I mean, people, at the office, they'll see me get up and be like, you know what, I'm trying to do this report and it's just not happening today. Let's go take a walk. I do that very regularly, and it has really served me. So I'm not sure what that title would be, but I think there would be probably a talk in there somewhere that might be worth giving.
And by linear, do you mean like kind of heads down, black and white? Here's the goal
Yeah.
line, hyper focused on that,
Yes.
versus being more self aware about the wiring, life stage, rhythm of life, kind of what's going on in your overall ecosystem and the environment that.
Absolutely. I had friends who took a straight path with their careers, right? And they knew what they were going to major in. They went all the way through. And some of them are, I mean, I don't have judgment. Some of them are really happy. Some aren't, they stop to look up at some point and be like, "Oh wait, this doesn't actually feel like who I am now." I instead, I was in the jewelry industry. I was, worked with artists for a long time. I was in nonprofit, and now I'm and now I'm working full time in our company, and I think that every single one of those kind of journeys has made me a much better leader now in the role that I have.
That's great perspective. I think sometimes this tunnel visioned approach certainly has benefits, but there's consequences.
Mhm.
There's light and dark in everything. There's pros and cons.
Yeah,
So
so true.
what I observed is that in the world of finance, in my lane, that the characteristics, habits, and activities and wiring of people that create a successful life for them be the very thing that traps them in that life. So you could climb the ladder of success and have an outcome, and it's been amazing to see that ascension in that career or that business. But sometimes people reach the top of that ladder and they don't know what else exists outside of that journey. And they
Mhm.
stay on this treadmill of activity thinking that they've got to chase the next whatever the the goal line is. There's strength and benefit in that, but there's also a captivated individual at times who may not
Yeah.
know what personal fulfillment means. Maybe they've lost relationships along the way. Maybe they've sacrificed their health and things like that. So I know that for me, I've thought about, okay, why do I do what I do, and how can I raise consciousness first with myself? A friend of mine says freedom's an inside job,
Yeah.
and how to influence others to grow in their awareness of what's available, and that call that true wealth. There's many currencies of true wealth, health and creativity and working out, physicality, things like that. A whole spectrum, and I think it's wonderful when people can put together
Mhm.
the pieces of the currencies that they value at this moment in their life.
Yeah.
Now,
Nathan,
speaking
I if I can interrupt you real quick, I we had that conversation around the work that you're doing, and I think that it is so important, like helping people define for themselves what wealth is, what success is. And I think that that has been a journey that I've been on really my whole life. Like what does you're told that it looks one way, and then you go for that and you're like, "Oh, that doesn't fit." Right? And then you have to be like, "Okay, well what does mother look like for me? What does wife look like for me? What does business owner or leader look like for me?" And I think so much of growing up and growing consciously is defining things for yourself.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there are some unique challenges for women in the space where they're involved in family, they're involved in career, they're involved in community, all of kind of the even the categories that you just mentioned. What's your take on that, and how do women navigate, especially in a busy stage of life, all those plates that are spinning?
I go back actually to I think the one of the first things we spoke about was when you were saying that your dad, had you pick up the rocks, and you listed some things that helped you. And one of the things was is you recruited a friend to help you, right? And I think that relationship is so crucial. Like find your community that helps you. We're not meant to do it alone. We're not meant to raise kids alone. We're not meant to lead alone. It's about like finding mentors, finding women that you respect and reaching out and asking, can I learn from you? Like, can we discuss this? And I actually have not had somebody say no. I think that people who are really balanced, they want to share that. I think that they feel a responsibility even, to share what has worked for them. And then also being willing to then turn around and do the same for others. I think that that has been something that has really helped me with those plates. I think another thing is when things feel overwhelming, there's a tendency, or maybe it's just me, but I doubt it is, to have everything feel equally overwhelming and important and just not, and it's just feeling impossible. And being able to get space from that and be like, okay, 10 of 11 of these things don't actually have to happen. Like they feel overwhelming, but they don't have to happen. This is the only thing actually that I need to focus on. Being able to get that space to prioritize is also a really important thing. And then the last thing is just give yourself a ton of grace. That's the thing I've had to learn to do. Give myself a ton of grace and ask for help and chart my own path.
I think when we take care of ourselves first, we're so much more effective in caring for others. It's when we put the care for others first and then push ourselves to the back burner that in the short term that may work, but it is not a sustainable solution long term. You've had a wide range of life experiences. I heard gemologist and a lot of creative endeavors and the farming focus. Knowing what you know, what advice would you give a 20-year-old Eli?
This is another thing that we connected over at TED was meditation. If I could do, I think that I try not to regret anything because I think it makes you who you are, right? And you're supposed to be there. But if I could change one thing, I would have started meditating earlier. I actually grew up with hippie meditating parents, and I just was like, "Oh, they're so weird. I'm not doing that." And then, fast forward, decades and decades and decades, I'm, now, very passionate about Vedic meditation, and it has been an absolute game changer for me. It has helped me so much with anxiety. I have a long history with an eating disorder, and that just I don't know. It wasn't that I was trying harder to get well or anything like that. It was just it started to just make life easier, or it started to make me feel more equipped, right, for life. And so I would certainly tell myself to start meditating earlier.
I love that.
Mhm.
Meditation has changed my life, and I was introduced to it about 6 years ago, and I find the power of just releasing all of the expectations or thoughts or things that we carry in our mental backpack.
Yes.
It can be a lot, and I think they asked Buddha what the benefit of meditation was, and he said nothing. Or no, they asked what have you gained from meditation? And he said, nothing. But what I've lost is fear,
Yeah.
anxiety, depression,
So
what
good.
about tomorrow. And
Yes.
when I heard that list, I'm like, I'm going to
Oh,
sign
it's
up for
so good.
that. Is
Yeah.
so amazing because the power of being present is where life is. And a
Yeah.
lot of time we either worry about the future, we're caught up in a past event that we're trying to reconcile or figure
Mhm.
out. And both of those spaces minimize the present, and present
Yeah.
is where life truly is. So
Happens. Yeah.
I'm grateful that our paths cross. Glad that we
Yes.
sat beside each other and didn't talk to each other on the flight, but that we later met each other at the conference. So uh,
Yes.
appreciate your
Me
time of
too.
day in the canoe.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review. To discover what wealth means to you, please take our assessment at planningalt.com.